Hello and welcome to the Vertical Bar Podcast. I'm your co-host Jared, and I'm joined from Orlando, Florida. Today we're going to talk about the latest tech innovations, tech trends, and just talk about the industry in general. And I'm in the studio here today with.
Chris Allen. I am joining today from Vancouver, Canada, and I'm excited to join the Vertical Bar podcast and help demystify the world of technology and entertainment and how it all meshes together.
Awesome. From our company, Vertical Bar Media, to the wider tech universe, we're going to delve into all things digital. So, what's on the topic list for today, Chris?
Oh well, we got some AI news. Seems like we always got some AI news, but
Yeah, I
we
never
gotta
have enough AI news, right?
no, totally. And some of how that kind of connects with the film industry. Maybe segue over into the Acolyte, the new acclaimed Star Wars show.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
getting some feedback.
yeah, definitely some feedback. We'll leave it at that for a second and come back to that one and hopefully break it down. And then also I want to share some stories about the potential ban for drone operators in the U.S. that could have really wide-reaching implications, and share how that kind of reminds me of a scenario in my professional life where I have a story with Huawei, the giant telecom company out of China, and how that personally affected me.
Oh wow. Yeah, so I'm a drone operator here in Florida, and I definitely am interested in debating this topic with you. But without forgetting to thank our AI overlords for scripting this intro, let's dive straight in. So what's going on with the AI? We have like at least a dozen articles on this week of AI. Probably the most prominent one is will AI become a friend or foe to animators? And this is kind of just for digital artists in general. Like we're seeing backlash from Adobe implementing so many AI features into their workflows that it's like, well, what's creative about that process with that product anymore? Like you just type in a couple words, and what's the point of even having Photoshop? Like, why do you need all the features and layers and all this kind of stuff? What are you thinking?
Yeah. I was thinking, like the late night talk show guys, and like even the weekend update on SNL, how they always love to throw up those cool graphics and how much time people used to spend making those graphics, and now it must just be like, boom, okay, give me a graphic of an old lady driving a golf cart on the moon, boom, right? Like you could get whatever you want so quick now. But and moving it to animation, and like we always revered what people could do at Pixar and things like that. But as AI gets more advanced, like those guys got to be getting nervous. I get it, because anything to do with creating digital imagery of any sort, computers can kind of do it better.
Yeah, and I mean, we kind of see this trend in the industry already in various industries, but one that I've particularly noticed is that, like, gaming studios, for the last couple of years now, we're talking about massive layoffs across the industry after what has been like a significant hiring boom in the industry. More artists, more graphic designers, more coders, more animators, more all of that. And we're seeing kind of that bubble burst with AI coming onto the scene. I don't know if that was a bubble that was going to burst before, but it just seems like projects are just getting so large and out of hand that they're not really producing the same kind of results that I think the industry is expecting. Like we see with movies, like Marvel's movies costing hundreds of millions of dollars to make. Like, yeah, a lot of that money's in animating and digital CGI kind of things, but like how much of that time did people actually need to spend on those kinds of projects? Like how much time did somebody need to spend modeling a rock
Yeah. Well,
for a CGI scene for like a building to fall apart? Like how did they need to like engineer that entire scene like in the wireframe in the background? Like when these buildings blow apart, they have structures inside of them digitally, and like people spend a lot of time making that kind of stuff, and it's almost unnecessary for like what the actual concept of the film is, and like the entertainment value of that few seconds that people are spending hundreds of thousands of hours on.
yeah. Does anyone really go in like slow motion and be like, oh, look at the way that piece of rubble flew out of that building when the aliens attacked, right? Like, it is kind of just so standard fare in all of our entertainment now that if a computer can spin it out faster than and just as realistic, then you don't need that human animator, right? But it is kind of scary because you do lose something if you try to downsize that whole area to a certain point. You lose that human creativity element, right? And that's always the argument with AI is, the computer can do the function, but you still need the human to have the imagination to say it was aliens that blew up that building, right?
Yeah.
So
But I think this
you
kind of
can't replace
reduces the
us.
barrier because, like, how many stakeholders in a video game actually need to have that vision in order for that game to come out to reality? And the way that I put on it is like these Marvel movies. How many ever millions of people worked on them? Like each one of these little people, they had their little idea of how this stuff should work, and like that inefficiency is kind of what almost destroys the vision for a lot of these movies. And I think that's what is harder for you see the larger the project gets, the less likely it is to actually be successful. There is a point where it just seems like there's too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too many writers writing the story that it's no longer like one person's vision or one idea. It's like an amalgamation of things, and it just kind of goes on to miss the mark in that way. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think you bring up a really cool point there too, which is like we're focused on these massive studios and maybe the impact of huge gaming studios and movie studios, but think about like the
Like,
independent
what does it
film
empower
industry
that
and
one
how
person to do? Like, okay, now that person who wants to make a video game doesn't need to think about how to animate the rocks falling, right? They don't need to think about animating their character. Like, this can be done with AI in a lot of senses. Yeah, I think it.
or what about like a small startup kind of gaming company that before would be really hard pressed to produce the kind of content. Maybe they got the best concept and story and they don't have the biggest funding. Now through AI, they can actually produce a project that looks as good as something else, but the story behind it is their amazing creative story, which was maybe better than something that was being produced by a big gaming studio. So in film and in video games, I think you're going to see these kind of upstart smaller companies showing up with games that impress because now they can do it on a smaller budget because of AI.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, honestly, it's not even just AI. It's the because we use AI as like a broad catch-all, but just the algorithmic learning principles that we've been able to apply to workflows to be able to reduce their barriers to entry. Like anybody can download Blender right now on their computer and start 3D modeling. Like that's something that didn't exist 15 years ago. Like
Yeah.
when Toy Story was made. So think about the stories that can be told because of the advancements in this hardware from the point of where Toy Story was made by a team of engineers and prop makers and things that had to go into the modeling and like the physical reactions of the components and the actual animation, and like now that's just a plugin for Unity.
Yeah. I'm sure like there's grade six animation projects coming out right now that look better than first gen Pixar
Oh
movies, right?
yeah, oh yeah.
It's so rapid that how that's changed, right? So, but back to the kind of main topic, right? Like there is like a concern by animators and people whose jobs are at stake here, and I know the entire writer's strike and the actor strike last year was such a big part of that was trying to block AI from stealing their jobs, kind of thing. Because you can get a pretty good shell of a script written just by asking, throw the plot points into ChatGPT and out it'll come, right? And animators are no different than writers and actors and really any of this disruption within the workforce. Like they're saying now that one of the main kind of career paths that people can pursue is a prompt engineer,
Hmm.
right? And I mean, a prompt engineer is just being able to type into AI the right things to get the right results.
Yeah,
And that's really dumbing down coding at that point.
yeah. I mean,
So,
I'm talking to some companies doing consulting, and it's just amazing to me that a lot of people don't understand that we've already passed the inflection point for this. That if you're not using these generative tools in your workflows, you're going to get left behind. Because honestly, the most creative people, they're going to find uses for these tools, and they're going to find ways to make them do even more things than you would be capable of doing with them. And you're just going to get left behind in that because
Yeah.
it really lowers the barrier to entry for anything. Like, let's say you want to start a YouTube channel. It used to be as easy as just making a YouTube, you know, signing up and like recording videos. But now you can animate those videos and like you can have editing to them and you can do all kinds of like story driven elements with it, you know, through generative AI that you wouldn't have been able to do that would have just taken amounts of time or you to hire somebody else to do for you, you know?
Yeah. Even just logo creation, branding, all that kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff, right? Like it's yeah, it doesn't take a lot to look very impressive now with what's out there. So yeah, I mean it's all work in progress with everything about AI, right? Is it's this balance of like fear of job loss, but there's everybody said that through so many iterations of technology over time, and humans have adapted. So I mean I have to give us hope that we're going to adapt, and like certain jobs won't be here anymore, but there'll be new jobs that come out of this that
Yeah.
will hopefully fill in that gap, right? And keep people working because people still got to work.
I mean, yeah, but you know, they maybe
So I
we
guess
don't
we'll
have to. Like, for what? All that socialism and stuff. It's got to be
yeah, we
good.
need the money, right? Someone's got to pay us. That's all. Yeah,
Yeah.
the AIs will take care of us, right? That's it. They'll be benevolent and they'll do all the work for us, and they'll just print some cash for us, and we'll be okay.
Yeah.
It won't be Terminator at all.
It's just so strange to me that it's been like 100 years or something since the advent of computers, and even like 150 years since we've flown aircraft, like since machines were capable of flying. And
Yeah,
the rate of
120
progress that
years
we've,
since the first
yeah,
flight. Yeah.
yeah, the rate of progress that we've had since then, it's just like, what are we even still doing with these old archaic systems of like money and capitalism? Because like,
Right. Well,
I mean, it's
go ahead.
just, yeah, I don't understand. We're gonna have to rethink all of this now. Like, there's still work to be done. There's still value to be created. It's just not necessary that everybody has to do it now. Like, it used to be that everybody had roles that needed to be filled, but now there's more roles than there are people, honestly. And we always see it as like there's being a reduction in jobs, but overall it just seems to be increasing. Like, the way that I've always looked at it is we can have one worker on a factory line doing one job and they continue on, you know, for Henry Ford's model of the assembly line, right? Like, that's traditionally
Mhm.
what's thought of as like what we need workers for, is to be able to just do a manual task in a repetitive motion. But with the advent that we've had with machinery and power delivery and being able to do it, now it's one person is able to do like 100 tasks. And I think with AI, it increased the number of tasks that person can actually do at any one individual given station without overloading them, right? Like, AI doesn't require, or the technologies of having a more refined, but Dan, you got like 5 minutes? Okay. That's good to know what that is. um,
Yeah, they always it always gets framed as yeah this job loss thing rather than a human productivity increase, right?
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's really
Like,
what it is. It's a massive increase to what one person can accomplish. So if everybody harnessed that power, that's where we exponentially grow, right? But it's not for everybody too, right? There's still plenty of physical labor jobs that are 100% essential that AI is not replacing today, and building robots is still very expensive. So they're not going to go build your house for you. But for certain segments, especially anything to do with technology, even writing, right? Just even writing simple kind of emails and things like that, it can speed things up, and it just makes you more productive. So if you frame it that way, you don't have to be so afraid of it. other than if you say, well, if you're more productive, then they don't need as many people to do the job, and that means that this person doesn't loses their job. And I don't know, like so far, I mean, like there are examples like you're pointing to in the video game industry and things like that, but you also point out that there was a big hiring boost before that, and maybe they overhired, right? There's
Oh yeah,
less
definitely
headcount numbers.
definitely a COVID overhire and like a double whammy of the AI industry coming in like at the same time was just
Yeah,
worst case
yeah.
scenario, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So now, I mean, it's interesting to see where, where the jobs will shift, and it's all changing so fast now that, I mean, I'd hate to be a kid in high school right now planning out my future, because maybe the job idea you had isn't even a job that will be needing you in 5, 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So you really gotta kind of look at it through that lens. I'm lucky to be on the other end of that, and I've got a comfortable enough gig that I can ride it out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the interesting things too from a supply and demand perspective. Generally, technologies like AI aren't changing supply and demand. All that's changing is a business's ability to output and meet a demand. So, kind of what that tells me that people aren't really seeing about the situation is that for every time that these businesses are laying off people, they're obviously increasing their output or maintaining the same kind of output to vilify their shareholders, obviously. But overall, they're going to try to just increase their productivity and or increase their output. And that doesn't change anything about the demand. So if that company is still seeking to increase their output, there's still demand to be sought. So people that are getting laid off, there should be space in the industry for them. But what we're finding right now is there's not, which is really strange. And I don't know if it's just a delay because people aren't starting businesses or there's just not much as incentive to chase this kind of stuff. Although it's interesting. I see it's coming back though. I see a lot of entrepreneurship coming back and starting up. It seemed to
Well,
go away during COVID or like hibernate.
yeah, maybe. I mean, and if you can reduce your work, your costs on labor while still producing the same kind of volumes, your actual profits are going to go quite a bit higher, right? So that's probably what one of the main things you'll start seeing is, that these companies, some companies will get wildly profitable as they're able to cut 20, 30% of their workforce and still do the exact same business.
Oh yeah, I mean,
They don't even need to grow
shareholders love a
sales.
good layoff.
They sure do. They sure do. Yeah, you bet.
All right, let's move on to our next topic here. Actually got to the first trailer for Venom: The Last Dance is released, and we got Star Wars: New Acolyte coming out. So
Yeah.
which one first? Let's talk about
Yeah.
Sony's and Marvel coming together with Venom, and
Yeah,
actually
it's
Deadpool. I'm pretty excited about that one too.
yeah, I'm much more excited about that than this. I mean, it's interesting watching Sony try to keep their Spider-Man universe license. I mean, I don't know anyone who watched Madam Web, but every review I saw on that thing was that it was just garbage. So, but they gotta, they want to keep producing these movies set in Spider-Man's world so they can keep their licensing. So Venom's actually been, I think, successful for them financially. So that this one actually makes sense, and it's fun to watch. It's the tongue in cheek kind of multiple personality type vibe that goes on. It works great. But I have to admit I didn't watch the last Venom, but I feel like I should get caught up and check this one out. The trailer looks pretty good.
Yeah, overall, I like the Venom series. I like the Deadpool series too. It definitely is kind of tongue in cheek to the traditional kind of Iron Man movie that we've had for the last 16 years now. Um,
Yeah, we're going back
I'm
that far
excited.
now, man.
I'm excited. I actually tried to go on Disney and watch some of the. I watched both Deadpool 1 and 2 recently. And I tried to watch some of the older Marvel movies and I just couldn't get into them. I like the old Iron Mans, but like some of the Captain Americas, the Hulks, could never get into any of the Hulks.
Yeah, I always kind of think back, like I keep thinking that I'll go back and redo the whole Marvel Cinematic Universe at some point with my son. My son's 8. But I feel like, I don't know, maybe will they hold up? I don't know. The plot became so convoluted by the end of it that I have hard, unless you really can get yourself in the right mindset for it. But Deadpool is so standalone and so fun. Every
Yeah.
one of them, like it's just the whole way through. You're cracking up. It's got great adult humor, good action. Ryan Reynolds just really found that character, and the idea
Yeah.
of him bringing back Hugh Jackman as Wolverine and those two's chemistry,
Oh man,
all the stuff they put out
I
is
saw an
so
interview
funny.
with them recently. Oh, it was so good. Like they're perfect. They nailed that duo. And I think it's gonna be awesome on screen.
Yeah, yeah. See, when does Deadpool come out? That's like
I don't know.
end of this
Producer
month or
Dan should probably be looking it up, but he's playing with
early
himself right now.
early July, end of June. It's pretty soon. It's yeah, I
Oh
thought so.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We're talking like a month away, so that'll be July 26th. Oh, okay, you got my hopes up. Sorry. Okay, well, it's six
And
weeks or
so
so.
how's this kind of comparing with the general reception for Disney's new Acolyte series?
Yeah, well, you mentioned you watched it, right? I watched it last week. They
Yeah.
released a 2 episode kind of get you started, get you into the storyline, and there's been tons of backlash for the Acolyte before it even launched, right?
Mm.
The kind of the showrunner, creator. A lot of people are like, okay, who is this? This is Harvey Weinstein's personal assistant that made a play that Kathleen Kennedy watched and really liked. That was kind of the backstory as I understood it, right? And I think that there was initially a lot of backlash from the general Marvel fan or Star Wars fan base of like, who is it? Who is this? Okay, let's see what happens in the trailer, and then there was a big pushback of like, wow, this is the most woke Star Wars of all time, right? Everybody is either a female or a person of color the whole way through, so everybody was already kind of getting their back up against like, oh, they're just trying to do a whole bunch of virtue signaling in this new Star Wars. But I try to put all that stuff aside, right? And I'm a huge Star Wars fan, love Star Wars, good and bad, and kind of trying to go in with a fresh, open mind on it. And it opened kind of great with the Carrie-Anne Moss kind of even feeling a little bit like The Matrix with some of the wire work in that action scene.
Yeah.
And then from there,
I
man,
think
did
they
it go
nailed
down the
that part.
toilet. But that part was good.
So, like, let me give you just kind of my general, like, the last week I've kind of been on vacation, and the kids are up in Atlanta and getting ready for a big move here. So, normally I haven't been able to watch TV while I'm, like, doing work, but now I can have the TV and I can have it as background noise. And I put the Acolyte on, and I was glued to that screen for the first, like, 5, 10 minutes during that whole Matrix battle, right? Like, that was
Mhm.
awesome. I love that. And the next 2 hours I was back at work. I don't remember anything about that show. I not a single scene. I grabbed my attention enough to like look up at the screen while I was working. Like nothing. Meanwhile, like I was watching Deadpool. I put Deadpool on and like I stopped working and went over on the couch and watched Deadpool for a little while. Like
That's a good
it's
gauge for you. How good is
yeah,
a
it's like
show is how much
if it can if it's on the screen and it can engage me and like I want to continue working with it, like that's the kind of content that I look at. Like if I put any of the new Star Wars content out there, it inevitably ends up like that. I'll just go back into my work and it's background noise, and then there's like a lightsaber battle. It's like oh cool,
yeah,
but
yeah.
like Attack of the
This
Clones, same thing. I'm over on the couch watching it, like feet kicked up with some popcorn.
Yeah, that holds up. Yeah, no, too many characters, too many, not enough time for character development, and the
Mhm.
acting is really weak. I was kind of surprised that the sort of main Jedi Master you're supposed to like is the dude from Squid Game,
Mhm.
and I feel like he's probably a great actor when he's got Korean dialogue, but he seemed to really be struggling with the English dialogue. There was just no kind of believability or intonation in his delivery of the lines. I was like, okay, he's kind of flat. Maybe I'll like somebody else. And then you got kind of like brooding, cool, super good looking, even has to have his shirt off sometimes, male Jedi guy, and he doesn't have much to do. And then you get this twin trope going on the whole time where it's like, oh, which twin is it? Is it the good twin or the bad twin? And it's like, we've seen it all before, and it just doesn't really, didn't really inspire, and everything just falls into place. It felt like a little bit more like a video game kind of writing. Like you're like, okay, finish that level, move on to the next level. And maybe I'm doing a disservice to video game writing because I've been much more involved in plots than I was in this. But the whole thing just it's not going anywhere fast, and I hope that maybe it pulls itself out and it can be better. But right now, I'm like, why? How did this get greenlit? You got this whole amazing universe of characters and things, and you want to keep just going and creating something new with a bunch of characters that no one knows or cares about. When you've got all these, like, throw Yoda in. You're right in the right era. Yoda would have been alive and kicking and doing right stuff, but
Yeah,
no
Mace
Yoda.
Windu. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. Mace. I think Mace would have been dead
Where's
at
his
that point.
like?
But he
He
wasn't
needs
born
Solo,
yet.
though.
But he should have his own show. Yeah, I mean, Sam Jackson's still around, right? We could DH
Yeah,
that guy.
I think he's.
Yeah.
I think he's even been interested. I mean, he still could have survived that. We have no idea.
That's a really good point. I've heard that a few times, and there's a really fun fan
And
film
see,
you can look
that's
up
the
on,
thing. Like,
on
there
YouTube where he did.
There could be epic stuff like that, and Disney just refuses to do it. Like, why wouldn't they do that? Like, why wouldn't they bring back Mace Windu and just have him like living a hermit life, like something, and had to save something or whatever. Like, they could make up a story that would be good.
Yeah, yeah. They got
But instead,
content.
we got
Even
the Acolyte.
yeah, I mean, even the Old Republic era had like Knights of the Old Republic, that classic video game that had lots of great characters in it. They could have had different Siths and all kinds of different Jedi characters. They
This
could have
is
brought those characters in.
this is what I struggle with the most. There is so much good intellectual property out there already established that video game companies are just sitting on, and movie companies are just sitting on. Like, I don't know who would own the rights to that. I guess I would assume that Disney owns all the rights to everything Star Wars now. Just everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Old Republic, High
everything.
Republic, whatever.
They
And
bought it
like,
all.
there.
Yeah,
Why are
I
we
know.
why are we getting so many TV shows? Like, why aren't we getting better video games? Why aren't we getting better books? Why aren't we getting better everything?
A movie? Like where's this next Star Wars movie, right? They're gonna do a Rey movie, which is a movie no one asked for. Rey got 3 movies. We got an arc that left everyone very unsatisfied. If you give me a solo Rey movie, I don't even know why I'm sitting there. I'm going, why do I feel like Daisy Ridley's better than that. She should just say no, I'm good.
I hope she will.
But yeah, it's like Marvel does it too, right? Where you have so many amazing characters you can in the Marvel universe you can work with, and then you're getting these like they're making a Agatha Harkness is the next TV series we're talking like E-list Marvel people. Like, I am a huge this is all 60s, 70s, 80s Marvel comics behind me in these drawers, and I mean, I love this stuff, but they're finding characters that I'm like, who is that again? It kind of blows my mind that that's where they want to go with this, or somebody's pulled something out of the archives and been like, oh, what about this character? I don't get it.
Yeah.
The Marvels? Who wanted to see all the different incarnations of Captain Marvel and Marvel related characters? They were never anything important in the comics.
Oh man, don't even get me started on the Marvels or Miss Marvel.
Yeah, yeah. The first Miss Marvel was okay, but you don't need another. And the audiences are punishing them, right? These movies are not working, right? They're like the Eternals. Like, what is going on? Like, where? No one asked for these, and no one's gonna go to these movies, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
And streaming's having a hard time making its money back on some of these projects too, because they're ballooning in budget. And so yeah, Star Wars needs a win at the theater, and I don't know, like, that Rey's not going to do it. But I don't know what well, I guess they're making Mandalorian and Grogu, which probably will work as a movie because it's the best thing they've done really since buying it.
Oh, they hit the merchandising balloon with that one.
Yeah, a lot of Baby Yoda backpacks.
Yeah. I mean,
and cups and everything else.
that's what's selling, and that's interesting. But I think a lot of people attached onto the Mandalorian as well, and somehow Disney screwed that up too. Like, how did we get the Book of Boba Fett?
Yeah, yeah. I mean that.
Like,
But I'll take that
explain
even
that to
over the
me.
acolyte.
Explain how we got the Book of Boba Fett, where the two highest rated episodes were the Mandalorian appearance
Yeah,
episodes.
it was really just
Like,
the
how
Mando
did we get
2.5,
all of
right?
that? Like, all the work that they did and all the CGI and all that other stuff is beautiful, but how did we get that story? And how
Yeah.
was it so bad?
Yeah, I mean, why couldn't we have done all this when the actors hadn't aged out so bad, right? The Boba Fett
That's
actor,
not even the problem. Like,
yeah,
we could have totally come up with a storyline that fit his age. I mean, obviously he was beaten and like going through his whole batha treatments or whatever, but we
yeah,
still got this like slumlord story.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, Mayor of Mos Eisley or whatever, right? Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. At least that one felt like a Western. I mean, that compared to Acolyte,
I
I
mean,
mean, I've watched Book of
in
Boba Fett
some
over and over
points until
again.
they brought out the electric scooters. Like,
The biker gang, come on. Yeah, I don't know why they need to stick that stuff in there. And there's also this idea. I feel like they're always like, we gotta capture the imagination of a new audience, and they turn around and kind of snub their back at the older kind of middle-aged guy crowd
yeah.
that made the franchise what it is. And I don't see a lot of teenagers loving Star Wars today. I don't see a lot of people in their early 20s loving Star Wars today. Like, it's just, maybe it's not for them because you're not making good content for them, but you're trying so hard to that
I
you just
think
alienate the true fans
I
and
think
don't get them.
good content reigns supreme, and I just don't think Hollywood understands what good content is, because it kind of goes back to before, like things that are made by committees, like what is it, like a horse made by a committee is a camel, because like all the people would just like, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, and it ends up being something that's not a horse, like it's a
Yeah,
camel.
yeah. Yeah, it's funny, thinking back to our previous topic, it's like you get all these humans trying to write a good Star Wars or a Marvel story, and maybe AI could actually done it better.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like I think a lot of Disney's and Marvel's projects miss showrunners, like people that are just absolutely set on how things work. Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
Disney's missing something, and I don't know how to explain it to them without like actually just showing them, because like they obviously just don't understand. Like, I don't understand how you don't understand what's wrong. Like, how are you looking at this and be like, oh yeah, well, we need to have more diversity in our films? Like, that's not what people are asking for. People are asking for more interesting stories, right? That we
hmm,
don't care if it's a woman or an African American or black or some kind of Tolik or whatever alien that we can come up with. They need to have better stories. They need to have deeper motivations. They need to have desires, wants, needs, and we need to be able to like try to understand them. They don't need to come out and say, I'm angry and sad all the time. Like, no, that's not how
yeah,
it
yeah.
works.
Yeah, just one
That's
note
bad
characters,
writing.
right?
Bad.
Yeah, bad writing, no character development, and yeah, I mean, even
Like,
Ahsoka
yeah.
had was a missed opportunity, right? Because you got people like Sabine Wren in that story who's like, I'm just an angry person, and those are one note emote,
Oh,
and you
yeah.
got
It's like, oh, yeah. And I got
Ahsoka
stabbed
is
by a
just like,
lightsaber. And guess what? Lightsabers don't kill
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, and don't break the mechanics of the world, right? Don't make it turn out that you could
Like,
actually.
how did you put that in there and then still screw up all the rest of the stuff, too?
Yeah. No, I think so. I was watching this robot head video, and it's like there's 3 times I think now
Robot
someone's
head.
been
Love that.
robot
Good
head
catch.
been stabbed with lightsabers and survived. And like, how did that suddenly not become lethal? Like,
Yeah.
just pour a little back
Like,
on it, and you're
it
good as
just kind
new.
of
Like,
completely negates Darth Vader now. It's like he's completely like cyborg, and that's it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know.
You
So
guys
yeah,
get your
it's
arms back?
yeah. It's so. I blame Kathleen Kennedy. I mean, I know she's a scapegoat for it, but she doubles down. It's like she goes out of her way to pick these kind of stories and things that she knows are going to infuriate the main lovers of Star Wars, and
Yeah.
it's like she should move on. She should go find something else. She clearly hasn't found great success with owning the Star Wars franchise. I mean,
I
God,
mean, the franchise produces money, but it's
yeah,
arguable on whether or not it produces as much money as it could produce.
certainly, yeah, it could do a lot more than it
Yeah.
is if
And
it was making the
that's
kind
kind
of
of
movies we
interesting
want to
because it
see.
kind of plays into another thing. I don't know if you're aware of the game Homeworld.
It sounds familiar. It's sci-fi, right?
Yeah, it's a
What?
sci-fi real-time strategy game. They just released the third iteration after like a 22-year hiatus,
Mm,
and it was met with actually a lot of backlash from the community. One, because we paid like 60 some a lot of people paid $100 or $200 for the collector's edition, and you got
mhm.
like an 8-hour game campaign.
Oh wow, it was short, eh?
Yeah,
8 hours.
and it was like it's hard to really pin on it, but Homeworld is not necessarily like a story driven game. It's an RTS, like you put in situations and you have to get out of them kind of and like survive, and then there's story elements to move you to the next place where you need to survive again. Um and the stories have always been kind of weak in the game, but this time one of the biggest criticisms for the game is that they actually like started doing like characters and like things like this, and it was overall just poorly done because that just doesn't how the game works. And like a lot of people, there was actually a community. There's a not a community, but the creative writer or director of creative writing or something on the project did a Q&A, and it posted on like basically the Q&A was just a manifesto on like diversity hirings and like doing this kind of stuff, and it really showed through in like how they started putting together the story, because there wasn't anything about like the entire core aspect of the game, which was continuing to survive, right? It's like character dramas between people, like watching soap operas or television or something. And it's
Yeah,
just so disconcerting to see that this trend is continuing.
yeah.
And like
I think
I don't understand why, because people are obviously negatively reacting to it, but I know that Disney has weaponized their like people's outrage completely counterintuitively to like what the actual issue is. And it's so weird. I don't know, because there's such like an echo chamber in the writing rooms themselves.
yeah, I feel okay. The Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that like I need all the content to be exactly like it was in the '80s and '90s, like that it's like all change is bad or anything like that. Like you say, like give us all kinds of different characters than we've seen before, but it always comes back to the storytelling, and instead of just forcing too many characters that are unlike other characters we've seen before without spending time to develop those characters and make them seem three-dimensional, make them have different traits. Like people are not one note. Like that kind of writing is so like the way it was so long ago, where there was good characters and bad characters. Like show me shades of gray, show me all of that, and I'll embrace whatever you give me. But that story writing where I don't care about the characters because you've not given me any reason to, it's never gonna draw me in, and you're not gonna get that viewership. So I don't know. Will we see change there? I don't know. I think the problem I think with streaming is you don't get like we'll all watch the Acolyte, or like you say, you put it on in the background. But does that mean you liked it, that you cared about it, that you would have paid money to see it in the theater?
Yeah,
No.
because I mean, there's a lot of independent sources for rating, like Rotten Tomatoes and things like this, but most of the streaming services have removed like upvote and downvote features. Like they just,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know necessarily how it looks on the other end, because I mean, obviously there's a lot of bot manipulation and there's just all kinds of
Yeah.
weird things going
It,
on the internet.
The Acolyte's got the lowest Star Wars rating on Rotten Tomatoes on the user score out of anybody. But they're saying, oh, it's just trolls, and they just explain it away, right? Like it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
oh,
And they're not even adjusting the core of what the criticism is. The criticism is these are bad characters. It's like, oh no, they don't like black people. Like
yeah, yeah,
that's
that's
not what they're
it.
saying. Like, yeah, there's some people saying that they don't like black people, but that's not
Yeah,
what that's not what the the criticism is.
You could cherry pick. You could cherry pick from the internet and make everybody seem horrible and racist and mean. But
Yeah, right. Just go visit
yeah,
4chan. Like that's probably real internet right there, and like that's has absolutely no representation of what reality is.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So anyway, we can hope and pray, man. And I mean, at least we got Deadpool, like you're saying. I think that's one that I will actually get my butt into a theater for this summer. Because
Hmm.
I haven't felt drawn to get into the movie theater in a while. Like it is a little extra effort, and it's got to be a movie that I'm going to care about. And they're just
Yeah,
not
I
coming
wanted
out with that
to.
many.
I think I want to get into the theater this week and go see the Furiosa, um, just for
The
Mad Max stuff. But I
Oh,
don't
the
know
new
yet.
Mad Max. Yeah, yeah. That's a big screen movie. That's true.
Yeah,
That
and I kind of hate that it hasn't been performing well because like this is one of the few movies that I would actually want to go see and like, but it's franchise limitations. It's really hard to.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've heard some kind of bad reviews of the actress that lady from what's the chess movie or a chess show on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Queen's Gambit actress.
yeah, right. Yeah, yeah. That people aren't liking her, and I don't know, but maybe that's personal taste. I'll definitely watch it, but I don't know if I'll make it to the theater.
Hmm.
But you go, do it. Somebody's got to support theaters, right? If we don't go to the theaters, they'll disappear, and then I'll be like, oh man, I wish there was theaters to go to.
All right, so let's dive into our next topic. Now, you actually have a little bit more experience with this, but I'm going to brief it up from my side firstly, and then we can kind of see where your experience comes in with this.
Yeah.
So, the U.S. Senate is set to deliberate on counteracting CCP Drones Act, HR House Resolution 2684, June. Now, what this is and what this isn't is a lot of people are comparing this to a DJI drone ban, but most effectively, what this will most likely be is a limitation on using drone DJI or foreign manufactured drones for infrastructure purposes and federal and local government purposes. And to kind of give a background on what's actually happening here, ever since DJI rolled up on the scene, started producing these things, the law enforcement have seen an incredible use case for these. They've been using them for all kinds of things that they just don't. They can't call a helicopter in them for it all the time. They've been using it to locate lost persons. They've been using it to do search and rescues. They've been using it to find fleeing criminals, suspects. They've been using it to do traffic analysis, so they can actually use it to send a drone up, and then they can do a 3D map of like a large accident or something like this, be able to do all the calculations and be able to do like the measurements of the skid marks and all that kind of stuff from the air.
Mhm.
And not only has law enforcement seen this, but we've also seen this from the U.S. Forestry Service. We've seen this from the Department of Defense, Department of Education, Department, pretty much every single federal government agency in the United States has adopted drone use in some way, shape, or form in as of 2024, right? And these are all companies that are using DJI drones, the most common product on the market right now. And it's not just government agencies that are using these, but those are the ones that are posing the highest risk, right? And the risk is essentially that these drones are completely manufactured by China. They have no idea. We have absolutely no idea of regulating them by restricting what kind of information they can take. We have no control over it whatsoever. And that's just not acceptable for the use cases that we find a lot of law enforcement and the Bureau of Land Management, for example, like people that are going out and doing mapping surveys of strategic United States resource deposits are being conducted with DJI drones. We have no idea where that data is being stored in China, where it's being analyzed, and what's being done with it.
Or if it's even going to China,
No,
right? I mean,
well, we know it's going to China. I
have
mean,
they
it's
actually found backdoors in DJIs that have been proven to
yeah,
send data to China?
yep. That's the result of this bill is from.
Right, right. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
that's interesting if that has been kind of proven out, because
Hmm.
I hadn't read about that part of it, but I often feel like there is this kind of like China's the great boogeyman for the USA these days, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, because Russia's not doing so great at being a boogeyman right
yeah, well,
now.
Russia's back on the scene, but yeah,
Yeah.
they're not. They're their own kind of problem. But in terms of economic superiority, that's where U.S. wants to at every turn try to clamp down on anything that China can do to gain any kind of economic advantage over the U.S. while remaining the biggest customer of China. So it's kind of
Yeah.
a tricky relationship that for a long time was seemed like it was going along pretty well, but then China started doing too well, I feel like, for the US's interests. And so that's when lots of, heavy handed tariffs and blocking of technology and things like that started cropping up. And,
I
possibly,
think it's a lot deeper than that, honestly. I respect China a lot. China is a large country. They have a lot of people, and they have so much responsibility to deal with because of that. Like the number of people that we have in between the United States and Canada is like 400 million, right?
Mhm.
But China is dealing with upwards of 2 billion people, 2 billion mouths to feed.
one
And
billion.
I can
Yeah.
understand like where some of the authoritarian aspects come from, but they're I don't know.
Well, I'm not trying to.
It's a global world right now,
Yeah, I mean,
and
I
we're
don't think anyone should try to paint them as like a human rights bastion or some great country that
yeah,
like for sure they've got their issues for sure. But
yeah.
if
I mean, that's not to say that we don't have our own,
yeah,
but
yeah,
overall, from what I see, I understand that kind of perspective that you're coming from, where it's like we're just trying to hold China back, but that's actually kind of propaganda from China's side because what China's going through right now is some incredible problems, some problems that we'll probably never have to deal with as Americans. One is the consequence of their one child policy, where now their entire population is aging. The number of new workforce aged people is reducing every year, as well as some other economic factors. And what they've been doing on the global stage recently is what these drone acts are actually meant to kind of be political fodder for. One with their Belt and Road Initiative, a lot of the stuff that they're doing with Russia in terms of purchasing oil and purchasing natural gas from Russia despite sanctions. A lot of it, like, it's such a larger scale thing that what this DJI ban is than just DJI technology being used. And it kind of makes it easy because, we can talk about the security risks that they actually do pose, but overall it's just like a chessboard and it's just a piece. It's like, oh, how can we take 16 billion away from China today because they spent 16 billion on oil exports from Russia, kind of thing.
yeah. Punish them for saber rattling against Taiwan. I mean, the list
Oh
can go
yeah,
on and on.
yeah,
I would never want to say that I'm a great fan of China's foreign policy, but I think if you look at it from a technological advances only point of view, and as a global community, the more innovation we can have in technology, the greater the end result. Like we talked about earlier on the AI side, in terms of how fast the things are doubling and how you can get better and better technology. If you try to block technologies that you feel might be winning the race against you, and harm them to slow them down, is that intrinsically good for humankind everywhere? If you like, okay, so we say, okay, we block the DJI drones based on this in the USA. Now that, of course, will have huge outcry amongst all the drone using public in the US. But
oh yeah, I
but
see it all over the forums right now.
yeah.
Everybody's like, oh, what am I gonna do with my DJI
So
drone?
someone will say, "Oh, why don't you just go? Well, we can just use those good American-made drones, which are what? What are the American-made drones? Is there even one? I don't. They're certainly not.
There's several, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not. They're
It's
not in the
yeah,
same.
but they're completely dominated the market. The market share isn't even
Yeah,
close, honestly. And the pricing for American drones are also much higher. China can manufacture them cheaper. They've been doing it for longer.
yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, cheaper labor, all of that, right? So then that just it just ends up hurting
Yeah,
the.
it's not like they have slave labor to utilize
Yeah,
or
they're not
something.
using
It's not
niggers or
like,
anything.
oh yeah, no, not not that at all.
But yeah, so like I had a kind of a personal experience with this that maybe kind of changes the way that I kind of look at it. I ran a company for about 20 years here in Canada, and what we did was go to rural parts of British Columbia, the province I'm in Canada, and places where you couldn't get broadband, and we would put up towers, and we would use wireless microwave point to multi-point systems where we would put a receiver on somebody's house and we could get them a pretty decent broadband signal in rural parts of British Columbia. So that really was a game changer for a lot of these little, 20, 30 person hamlets that the big telcos were never going to get to. We
Mhm.
covered hundreds of those kind of communities, and it was a great business. And that technology evolved obviously a lot over the 20 years through the different iterations of kind of Wi-Fi and early grade kind of licensed wireless systems. WiMAX was an early technology we used, and then the transition to LTE came around, which is basically 4G from a marketing point of view, and that was a big game changer for us because suddenly we could keep up with the data needs. As soon as all the streaming services launched, all of our networks got flooded because you couldn't allow all these people to be streaming off of a kind of like a 300 megabit internet feed for a little community used to work great until everybody wanted to watch HD Netflix at the same time, right? So, but
Mhm.
with LTE technology, we could do much better speeds to that same community and do different types of things to make sure that we were most efficiently using our spectrum. And the leaders in that industry, this was maybe 2014 or so. At that time, globally, you got Huawei, Ericsson, and Nokia. And Ericsson and Nokia only really made things for large cellular carriers. Huawei was very interested in getting into the North American market and saw these little wireless internet service providers as a market. So they came, they really kind of offered us a look at their technology, and it was miles ahead of anything that we had access to for doing what we were doing. So we said, hey, this looks great. At the time, things were actually fairly cozy-ish with between the U.S. and China and Canada and China. So we went ahead and bought a bunch of this equipment, and it was interesting. We put it up, we put a press release out about it, and the very next day, I got a phone call from basically what I guess it would be the Canadian equivalent of the CIA, almost. It's called CSEC. Within Canada,
Mm.
and they look at any kind of cybersecurity
Yeah,
challenges within
it's like the
Canada.
NSA
Yeah,
probably.
or maybe more like the NSA, I guess, rather than the CIA. And so they gave me a call and they said, "Hey, I hear you've got some Huawei gear in your network." I said, "Yeah, no, I do. It's great." They said, "We're going to be on a plane out there tomorrow from Ottawa, the capital of Canada." I said, "Oh, what?
Hmm.
You guys don't want to come out here, do you?" "Oh, no, we'll be there. We'll talk to you in person." And so then these G-men came and flew out and talked to me the very next afternoon, and they explained the history of the Five Eyes organization of Britain, Canada, U.S., New Zealand, and
Yep.
Australia, and how they were formed to kind of keep things in check, and how the next wars that are going to be fought, or technology is such a huge part of it. If China and Canada, U.S. ever went to war, if China could turn off all the cellular infrastructure in Canada or the U.S., think of how powerful that is, right? That would shut down
Yeah.
everyone's cell phone, would be way more powerful than blowing up a building. So
Hmm.
that's why they sort of were like, we have to be very careful. You could have your radio equipment on the tower is pretty passive, but it all comes back to what's called an or evolved packet core. And that is the kind of brains of an LTE network. And they're like, you cannot
Hmm.
have one of those Huawei ones in there. That's serious. That can send all that data back to China. China could turn that off, shut off your network. And they actually ended up kind of financing a way for us to use a Canadian made packet core to replace it over the course of a couple of years. So that was kind of my first sort of touch of like, oh, hey, you're really not liking Huawei. But then Huawei made a huge efforts in Canada. They even sponsored our kind of national program, Hockey Night in Canada. As you can imagine, it's a huge program in Canada that had the Huawei logo on it for a good year. And
Yeah.
their handsets were becoming very popular. They were the top Android brand in the company after Samsung. And then the US really started cracking down on China more. And then that kind of put us into a tough spot where and Canada was holding back on punishing China in the same way as long as we could. But then the U.S. put out an extradition warrant arrest for the CFO of Huawei,
Hmm.
who was in Canada at the time, and we arrested her. And the whole thing came around to a concept where she had misled HSBC, the bank, the kind of connection between a third party company and Huawei, and could have potentially exposed them to doing business with Huawei, which would have broken a US sanction. And we were kind of stuck in the middle and had to arrest her and go through a long process. And China, in retaliation, arrested 2 Canadians for completely trumped up
Hmm.
charges, and things got very frosty during that time. But anyway, I guess the point is from what we were doing in terms of a technology advancement, it kind of hampered us in delivering quality broadband to rural Canadians because of the geopolitical forces at play there.
Yeah. And I mean that this is kind of indicative of China's global strategy recently. I don't know if you're aware of their Belt and Road
For
initiative,
sure. Yeah.
but it kind of rolls into the same package. They come in, they say, "Hey, we're going to do this for this and this." I know that you guys are having a hard time meeting those payments, but hey, maybe things turn around for you, and they don't usually. But for companies that are like this in the United States that get caught up in over purchasing and over reliance on foreign technology like this, it's all it has to do is China has to invade Taiwan or something like this, and then they just want to turn off. China wants to turn off everything that's in America, and that's it. Like you said, the critical cell phone infrastructure just all of a sudden went down because China is like, I don't want to maintain it anymore. Sorry, bye. Just like all the American companies do in America anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean
But at least
it's
there's some kind of control that we can have over these companies. I don't know how much control. I mean, with what Facebook and Google and Microsoft are capable of, I don't honestly know what
yeah, and I wonder
what the
where
United States government is any better.
and people will start pushing back too, right? Like you look like the TikTok ban is widely unpopular, right? Like if that fully goes through and that app gets shut off, I mean, people will be rioting faster than anything. You take away
I
DJI
doubt it.
and TikTok, I mean, I mean, I doubt it. You're right, but
I highly doubt it. I believe that all the outrage is completely manufactured.
well, I mean, there's
Almost 100%. I mean, there's people
millions of
attaching onto
users,
it,
right?
but not to the point. Yeah, but not to the point that people are going to riot over a tech service being like
No, they
down
won't
or,
riot,
or, or eliminated,
but they'll
right? I mean,
certainly they'll
there's only
vote.
like a couple thousand people that make money off of that platform. Those are the only people that would be incentivized to do anything for it,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Like the users aren't incentivized to do anything for Facebook if Facebook just disappears tomorrow.
Yeah, and I guess the problem is too, you got like Democrats and Republicans both support all anti-China measures, so there's not like you're like, well, I'll vote those people out of office and get someone who's more China friendly. That's not even possible. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
just be stuck with whatever
I mean,
we
it's
get.
it's it's not a problem. I don't know. Like being friendly to China isn't getting us anywhere. China's still doing some pretty shady shit, and they're going to continue to do some pretty shady shit. Right? They're going to continue to subsidize the cost of modems and make sure that they can undercut Canadian providers to sell you cheaper modems to provide internet access for low income people. Like that's shady as shit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if they're still making money, I mean, everyone's still buying
Like
all their cheap stuff,
what if
right?
what
I
if
mean,
Mexico started doing that? What if Mexico started using government money to subsidize the manufacturing of modems to undercut American modem producers, manufacturers?
yeah. Well, I mean,
We would crush
there's
Mexico.
subsidies for every industry in every country though too, right? I mean, look at how much money the auto
Yeah,
industry gets
true.
all through North America, right? And so
Right,
subsidies come
right.
and the government
But
supported
I mean, that's
industries
how
comes
that's how
in.
China's dominating the market in their EVs right now. Government's pouring trillions of dollars into Chinese-made EVs, and they're going everywhere. You're finding Chinese-made AVs in all over Africa right now, thanks to their Belt and Road Initiative. They have all those ports to ship them to,
Yep.
thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah. But you can't fault them for trying to make money, and yeah, and it's advancing the technology further too, right? So I don't know. It's a tough one, but
Yeah.
we can't figure it out, and we
Yeah.
have
I mean,
no way to control it.
it's.
So I hope the drones don't go away though, because they're such a cool technology.
Oh, drones won't go away. There's tons of American manufacturers paced to take up the mantle. Manufacturers that have been using plenty of uh, industry, probably of international parts. Like, there's no need. China doesn't make anything specific that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah. Oh,
They just make it cheaper, probably.
yeah.
And that's only cheaper because it's subsidized off of the back of their citizens.
There'll be a lot of electronic junk if all those DJI drones. Maybe they can ship the DJI drones to Ukraine and they can use it to blow up some Russians.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think I would, I would definitely. That actually sounds kind of interesting. A buyback program for DJI drones,
Yeah.
getting U.S. dollars to buy back.
They could just ship them to Ukraine. I like it. Yeah, yeah. But I guess we should
Yeah,
wrap. It's been great chatting on all these topics.
yeah, sure. We can run the outro on this one, so we don't have to start a new recording.
Sure.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for today on the Vertical Part Podcast. As always, it's been a blast exploring technology with all of you.
Yeah, and it has, and if you're interested in more of these topics, you can check out the description, links to our socials. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. And
Absolutely, Chris. And we'd love to hear back from you. Reach out with any more questions, ideas, or just to say hi. We're on all social media platforms as Vertical Bar Media.
yeah, and until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and remember, the only constant in technology is change.
Nice.